I'm Margaret Howell for Infowars.com. I'm in studio with Owen Schroyer. We're going to be talking about the London mayor and his appointee, Owen, this deputy of integration, who worked with Cage, this extremist organization that's been described by the Islamic State executioner Jihadi John. He describes him as a beautiful man. This is the new deputy mayor of London. According to Breitbart, his name is Matthew Ryder. His full title will be Deputy Mayor of London for Social Integration, Social Mobility, and Community Engagement. He was appointed by Sadiq Khan this week. The thought police is in full force there in London, and this is a man who called Jihadi John a beautiful man. Of course, he's been one of the most brutal ISIS terrorists in history. What do you make of this appointment?
Well, it's another one of these made-up positions, an integration chief. I mean, what does that even mean? These are made-up positions that these social justice warriors are now bringing into our governments, bringing into our higher education systems. But, looking at some of the stuff this guy says, it really is shocking to think that somebody can come out and say some of the stuff that he says, and it has a lot of the same type of feelings and emotion-based virtue signaling that we're seeing with the media and certain aspects of our government doing with African Americans in the United States of America, trying to, whether it exists or not, trying to exploit oppression, put a magnifying glass on oppression, and then try to use emotion to try to stir civil unrest and then bring in whatever it is they see as the goal of the community for this new integration chief. It's basically Islamicizing or turning London into a Muslim neighborhood.
That's exactly right. The boroughs of London, they want to make sure that anybody who is concerned about Islamic terrorism, they're going to be labeled as Islamophobic and possibly even jailed. We saw this with Marine Le Pen in France, where she would speak out and be concerned, and then, they were issuing her jail time because of it. We're talking about Mr. Ryder, who spoke in 2013, this deputy mayor. He spoke alongside Mozam Bag. He was a former inmate in Guantanamo Bay who repeatedly admitted attending jihadi training camps and once signed a confession stating that he was an al-Qaeda recruiter. That's who his buddy is. Also, he was the chairman of an event where Cage is akin to Carr here in the U.S. He once said it's incumbent upon all of us to support jihad against Western forces, whilst praising the example of militants in Iraq who banned the terrorist group Hezbollah. So we know which side that he falls on, and unfortunately, he's become a part of this thought police brigade, where if you speak out and you're concerned against terrorism in your hometown, we're going to see a push to where this is basically becoming illegal. That's my fear and concern here. Like we do in France, they have such major anti-terror laws, but the terrorists are those, in fact, that are speaking out against it.
Well, they might pose as PC police, but they don't really care about offensive language. They don't want language and rhetoric that's going to stop their goal, which is bringing in Islam into London. I mean, that's the ultimate goal here. And as you just talked about, Al-Qaeda's leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, said, and again, they're calling out now for African Americans in America to join ISIS, essentially, and start using the same rhetoric of, police against black people, white people against black people, to try to indoctrinate people in America that are black into ISIS. And he says that until this day, and no matter how much they try to reform and obtain their rights according to the law and the United States Constitution, they will not attain it, for the law is in the hands of the white majority who control it as they wish, and the blacks will not be saved but by Islam. So this is a total attempt at an indoctrination of black people in America into Islam. And again, it's not about them caring about black oppression. They want to conquer the world with Islam. Another story right here, Australian Cardinal says Muslims want Islamic conquest of Europe. So they're even admitting it. And as you have so eloquently showed, the new integration chief is friends with radical Islamic terrorists.
Absolutely. So this group called Cage, they claim to stand up for Muslims who are persecuted by anti-terror laws. That's what they say. They were condemned by the previous Prime Minister of the UK, however, and described by left-wingers in the area as an advocacy group for Islamic fundamentalism in British society. So this is the new Sadiq Khan's deputy mayor. And I just want to point out some highlights of his career. And I encourage you to take a look at this Breitbart article. His career as a barrister, it's focused on taking British police. So he attacks the police every time there's an issue of undercover surveillance, every time there's an issue of unlawful detention, as he puts it. They have a tendency, he had a tendency to go after and take on police officers for that in the UK. And it looks like the thought police is in full force. I know that you and I discussed offset this unpolished diamonds comment. We're going to get to this in a second, but it seems to be pervasive of Western Europe, and it's a total Soros push. They want to make sure that anybody challenging Islam, radical Islam, is forced to stand down. They're even criminalized, and they're praising people who tend to come from a barbaric way of thinking, and calling them even unpolished diamonds. We've seen, Owen.
Well, if they can't legally stop your free speech, they're going to try to do it psychologically and mentally get you to back down, where you're too afraid to say something that might get you in trouble, or you're afraid you might offend somebody. And as you just talked about, they're trying to tie it in with the police now. The police are against Muslims, just like the media says the police are against black people in America. And the new integration chief says there's institutional racism in all organizations, and says there will be occasions when a problem remains embedded in public service and you need to take serious action. So, I mean, this is them admitting that they're coming to do something. They even said they don't want diverse communities even more. That's another quote I have from this guy. He doesn't want diverse communities. It sounds like a communist. This is right out of the Communist Manifesto. The religion of Islam is admitting they want to conquer Europe. We know what people like George Soros does to try to foment civil unrest.
He called the Catholics useful idiots because they welcomed Islam, you know, in the name of peace. These Catholics, these useful idiots is what he called them, because they stand down in these communities and they welcome it in the name of God, if you will. It's very bizarre, but he praises them. We know what the agenda is. We've tried to expose it here in InfoWars. Every single day we're out front exposing this agenda. And there are people like Milo Yiannopoulos. I want to take you to another article on Breitbart, and we've had Milo Yiannopoulos. He's been featured here in InfoWars repeatedly. Alex actually sat down with him during the RNC, and he coined a piece in Breitbart. It's called "The London I've Lost," and he goes into talking about how he's basically a refugee of the United States now, that he's decided that he's no longer safe in London. He goes on to say, "I know what they do to my kind. They throw them off of buildings. They hang them from cranes." And this is the adopted religion of choice, if you will. We even have these thought police that are going to start jailing people if you speak out against it. And it's a really moving piece, so, and it really makes you think about what they're giving up in the name of cultural diversity. That's what they're doing.
Well, and that's actual institutional racism or homophobia, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's actually ingrained in their religious beliefs. So it's absurd for these people to come out and then try to talk to us about systematic racism or you know, problems in public service that are just, you know, need immediate change. And then look at this doublethink. So we talked about the unpolished diamonds. These Turkish migrants go into the Netherlands and then film themselves beating people up,
raping
dancing
women
on police cars.
Correct.
And then they're conferred, said by a Socialist Party leader, Patrick Zoomermeyer, that they're just unpolished diamonds. But it goes even further. In Kosovo, Muslims set fire and defecated in an Orthodox cathedral, okay? Now, if this was Christians doing this to a mosque, the mainstream media would be all over it. Everyone from the Islam side of this would be saying that it's anti-Muslim, anti-Islam, and we have to do something immediately. But no, that's not what we see in the media.
Correct. So going back to Milo for a moment, he comes as a warning sign. He says, if you're scared of being called a racist for speaking out against Islam, think about what people will call you in a generation if you don't take a stand now. So he comes as a warning for this, and we're seeing Sadiq Khan set up a London government that is going to begin policing even the thought process, even your ability to say radical Islam in public, you could be jailed for that. You know, Milo wrote, "You just might be fools if you don't recognize what's happening in your own streets."
Thousands of years ago, there was a basic form of chivalry. Our ancestors would hear the drums of war, giving the warriors of the tribe a chance to organize and prepare a defense. 60 years ago, when foreign air forces were approaching filled with bombs, they had drums of their own, air raid sirens. But in the 21st century, there are silent weapons for quiet war, pathogens added to the food and water, and to the lining of plastics that destroy our vitality, turn off our hormones, and accelerate our journey towards death. I personally counter this onslaught with Anthroplex. Anthroplex is designed with known organic concentrated herbs to create the basic foundation to normal metabolic activity inside the human body. Discover why Anthroplex is turning so many heads today. It's time for us to take our bodies back into our own hands, and it starts at InfoWarsLife.com with Anthroplex.